Hello and welcome to another episode of Looking Out and Up with
Penny.
and Les Sojourner. What are we covering this week, Penny? Well, you write the bullet points for us, so.
Oh, okay.
Well, maybe we should make it clear that what we're trying to do here, right? So we're trying to make this a series, or this podcast is about sitting down and discussing with people or having a conversation, sometimes fun and lighthearted, sometimes a little more serious, about things that are going to go on in your life. And sometimes we go after relationship issues or recover relationship issues. And this week we're going to talk about purchasing land, right? That's kind of where we're heading with this whole thing.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
yeah. Because we have purchased land. Well, we've purchased land on a few different occasions, but at least one time in kind of a far-off place, in a long-distance place from where we are now. And we wanted to cover some of the ways to go about looking for property,
What we did.
Yeah, what we did, which is by no means the perfect way to necessarily buy property.
No, we're not preppers, but we like to be prepared. We like to always have options. So with that in mind, the way the world has been going the past
15 years, probably at least, we've seen it. We've kind of the mess that the country is in now, or the direction that we have probably seen this coming for 20 plus years.
Yes.
It's not like we were, and it's not so much that we like have incredible forward vision. It's just paying attention to what's going on around us. So we've always been a little bit concerned about what was going to happen in the United States, where things were kind of heading, and how it conflicted with kind of our views.
Yes. So we decided that we would like to start looking for a piece of property where should the
proverbial shit hit the fan.
Yes, I didn't want to say
My wife's so
that,
proper.
but should that hit the fan, I wanted to have a piece of land where all of our children can join us and we could become a tribe. It'd be a place where all of us, our family, could go to. So we sat down and we wrote down a list of prerequisites in what we were looking for. So if you're wanting to get out of this rat race, so that the 9 to 5, and you're thinking there's got to be more to life, or if you're living in a van, in a vehicle, in an
down by the river,
this is what we would suggest. This is what I would do if I wanted to get out and away from the rat race.
Well, this is what you've done.
This is what we did.
Yeah. And one of the things, I don't see it on the talking points here, but maybe we'll hit it up. Folks, if this is something that you're possibly thinking of doing, the number one point that I would like to make before we even start into this is don't wait until you feel like you have to move, or that you're just been pushed too far. You know deep down if this is something that you might want to pursue. And property is not getting cheaper. You would think that, and maybe it will be. I don't really know. The economy is kind of a screwed up mess at this point. But just to let you know that Penny and I, we tend to be people who want to do something kind of right now, and we want to get something done. We set forward to do something, and it's not that we give ourselves a 6-month window to get something done. But usually when we settle on something, we're going to push towards it, and it's going to get done rather quickly as opposed to like a long-term thing. Purchasing property for us was not that. If this is something you feel like you want to do, or this has been kind of in the back of your mind about, purchasing property as a getaway, even as a retirement place, start looking ASAP. Do not be in a hurry to purchase property. Penny and I spent, it's safe to say, probably 3 years looking for property. Now this was not like a full-time endeavor that we were doing it. Penny was, well, first of all, we had to figure out where we wanted to be to a degree. We had a somewhat of a location or a region of the United States that we wanted to be in. But do not put this off, because finding a property that's going to meet kind of the necessary requirements, or what you're kind of looking for, probably if you're looking to
That
go the
checks
route
every box.
that checks the boxes, and you might have 80 boxes, and you're going to have to determine that maybe 70 of those, or maybe 15 of those, are absolutely mandatory. The others fall kind of in kind of less degrees of importance. So that's what I want to get out of the way, is do not just, well, we're going to buy a property, and we're going to buy a property, and we're going to do it in the next 2 weeks. You may get lucky and that may happen, but Penny and I could tell you stories about looking for property, the amount of time invested, the amount of miles that were driven.
But what we're going to share with you in our steps might not work for you. It will, though, work for you if your thought process is similar to ours. And there's two main things. The first item that you've got to have is you have to be open to relocating. You have to be open to moving, whether to another state.
Yeah, it might be hundreds of miles, and in some people's instances, it might be thousands of miles. And I think a lot of people already kind of take that into account. But realize too that property ownership, if you're going to buy something and you're going to have a long distance relationship with it, the closer that property is to you, the better. When you start making improvements, when you start wanting to invest time and effort into the property, yes, it could be, we live kind of in what people call the Midwest, which I jokingly refer to as the Middle East. We live in the northern climates, and the thing is we could buy property, and we had looked for property. We kind of kicked around the idea of buying something, purchasing something out west, New Mexico, Arizona. But realistically, getting back and forth to there with tools and equipment that we wanted to invest our own time and sweat into the property, that was going to be nearly impossible. It could have been done, but just the simple back and forth becomes very
So you
difficult.
have to be open to relocating, and then the second mindset is you have to embrace, as we have done, that we're going to grow and become more with less. We accept and we embrace the challenges, the unknown that's going.
Yeah, well, this kind of drives Penny crazy, because Penny is a person who likes a plan, and to follow a plan, and that plan is going to. And I'm much more flexible when it comes to things, and I'm just kind of a laissez-faire, and kind of what happens. We'll deal with what happens. We offset each other wonderfully, because first of all, without Penny, we would have never found the property. The property what we wound up purchasing would have never been found. But when you do make the purchase, you have to realize that yes, there's a set way that you want to get the property set up. There's steps that you want to follow, but I can guarantee you, just about everywhere in the United States, if that's where you're purchasing property, things are not going to go completely to plan.
So our first prerequisite, our first box to check when we were looking for a property, and yours might be different, but for us, we wanted
A warmer climate.
because I wanted to be able to garden year round. I wanted to.
And Penny's brown. Penny's originally from Asia, and she doesn't like to admit that she loves tropical type weather, but she loves tropical type weather. She's just not crazy about the cold and snow. So this is
So that's the
warmer
first,
climate.
Our first check. We need to be in a warm climate. The second one is 2 or more acres we were looking for, because we want to make sure we have some distance between our neighbors, the nearest neighbors.
Oh boy, I can tell this episode's going to be longer than what we planned. Folks, we'll just let you in on a little secret here. When people start talking about off-grid, and they start talking, and it looks very, very fanciful. It looks very awesome to own 100 acres or 200 acres or 50 acres. Now, we did not purchase that amount of property. We bought well more than 2 acres. But I'm going to tell you what, taking care of property and keeping property cleared and setting it up so that it's useful, that you can actually get the use out of the property, whether it's riding horses or riding quads or just simply gardening. Be very careful about buying large tracts of land, folks. I'm just going to tell you right now, looks great on paper. Usually it's going to lead to a higher tax bill. We're going to get into that a little bit, but it doesn't have as many advantages as what people think it does, depending on your location. But yeah, so be very careful. We set out 2 acres, and we were really looking for 5 or more. We really we would have settled for 2 acres in the right location. This is part of that whole flexible thing. But 5 acres and more is what we were kind of looking for. We thought we'd be thrilled with like 5 to 12 acres or something like that. We wound up with more than that, but.
And then our other box, we the property has to be out of city limits.
Yeah, this was a no-brainer for us. Out of city limits, and yeah.
And
city limits, folks, just get you more regulations, more rules, and higher taxes in general. And most of you know that if this is something that you're pursuing. But yeah, out of city limits.
We wanted there to be a water source on site, on the property, whether it's a creek, a pond, lakefront. It didn't matter. We wanted to be able to have access to water
whenever we wanted.
Yes.
Not having to pull it from the ground.
Yes. We wanted.
Well, we wanted to avoid easements. This is a big one that people. Yeah.
No easements.
We actually own where we live. We actually have an easement on the property, and for access for a gentleman who lives up the road here. And it hasn't been an absolute thorn in our side, but it's not exactly the most fun thing to deal with either. So, if possible, the only way that I would tell anybody, if you're going to buy something with an easement on it, the ideal is that it ends at your driveway, at your property line. It's one thing if you're the beneficiary of an easement, that it's there for obviously your benefit. You're traveling through other people's property to get to your property. But if there is an easement on your property, you would like it to end within probably the first 20 or 50 feet of your property line so that you can get to your property, but people are not crossing through.
No HOAs.
That's a no-brainer, yeah.
Okay.
Anybody who's buying property and you're buying an HOA, you're buying yourself into even more regulations and rules, and yeah. Right?
We want to make certain that there is at least one buildable site. We didn't want our property to be so hilly and rocky that there was just no way we could make use of the land. So it had to have at least potential for one buildable home site.
As kind of a quick aside here, Penny and I, we spent time in the Ozark Mountain area when we were originally starting to look for property. And the landscapes are absolutely beautiful.
Stunning.
You get down there and there are sheer rock cliffs and stuff, and I realize it's not the same as out west for people who want to, yes, they're baby mountains or they're hills. And some of that topography, some of that is just absolutely beautiful. And you think you'd buy it, but folks, you are not buying a postcard. You are buying property that you have to, well, ultimately you have to get around on. You may, at some point, you may not be thinking this right now, but at some point you might want livestock. You might want to hunt that property. And we were places in the Ozarks that I don't consider myself a complete out-of-shape buffoon. But there was no way that you were dragging your deer or whatever. This stuff was almost unwalkable, folks. And as pretty as what it is, I hate to see people get into, they're buying let's just say they wind up with a 25-acre property, and 15 of it is so rough and so it's pretty much unusable, except to, not that there's a problem with this, but to go out and enjoy it, to sit and look at it, yes, but actual usefulness, it's don't get caught up in just the picturesque end of it. There is some rough terrain out there, folks, and be real with yourself. A lot of you are like us, I'm assuming. I mean, 40s. Well, folks, when you're in your 40s, 50, you can take it from me, 50 comes around rather quickly. You can take it from Penny that 60 comes around rather quickly. and your ability to navigate that property as you get older is should be a criterion. People overlook this, so I just wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
This is important, folks. If you want to use the property, it's got to be accessible. And I love the hills. Penny and I both love the mountains, but be realistic about what your condition is and what your condition is going to be 15 years, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So.
And then the last thing that we consider is it's the property's proximity to the nearest town, to modern amenities like gas station or grocery store or a convenience store.
Yeah, this is way overlooked too. There's a romantic side to this. Is kind of like the mountain end, right? The mountains look pretty, and being out in the middle of nowhere sounds fantastical, but when it's 45 miles to the nearest grocery store, folks, and things are not getting cheaper, and your time is always of some value, and you have to spend X amount of time getting back and forth to a city center or a town center where we bought. It was just a town, but it had all of the amenities. We were very, I want to say fortunate, but it was just waiting and finding what you wanted. As much as we were out in the middle of nowhere, somehow we still managed to be within 12 minutes or 13 minutes of the county seat, which had a hospital. Things that you would take for granted when we were working on the property. There was a, what do you call those centers?
A fitness center.
A fitness center, but it was part of the city, and it was very cheap to belong to. They had showers, they had a pool. This was like $20 a month or something for us to have access to this. And when we were down there working on the property, off grid, we bought this thing so that we could simply get in there and take a shower, get cleaned up. And
we got a membership so we could have access to a shower while we were living off grid on the property.
Yeah. So yeah, this is as romantic as it seems to be out in the middle of nowhere with nobody around. Here again, be realistic. At some point as you get older, the hospital being close by, and here again, take into account where we bought property. There are 3 somewhat prevalent venomous snakes. To be an hour from help or assistance or something, just simply because you were snake bit on your property, is not necessarily the greatest situation to be in. Or breaking your leg on the property and now you're 45 minutes from home or 45 minutes from help. So just kind of be realistic about yourself about being way out in the middle of nowhere. It's sexy. We got it. It's great in an Instagram picture, but you can find out of the way places that are still within 15 or 20 minutes to a town that has most of the amenities that you need. So, all right.
So that's our boxes to check when we're looking for a property. That's our values and what we desire. We like to keep things simple. We like to keep things simple so it's functional, easily repaired. So those are our checklists. And once you make your own checklist, the next thing you do is you make sure you write it down. Write it down into bullet points. For example, these 2 things is, the first bullet point is, how are you going to obtain finances? The second bullet point is, hold on.
Your budget?
Yes. You have to figure out what your budget is, your purchase budget. Okay? And those are the 2 things you need to figure out how you're going to get your finances. And once you get your determine how you're going to do that, then you have to, it'll help you configure what your budget is to purchase a property.
Well, yeah, and there are creative ways, folks. We're not, either one of us are financial advisors, but there are ways to use your 401k and to move money from your 401k. We bought property a little bit differently than most people, but we did sell an investment. We had another investment that was sold to purchase our property for cash outright. Financing on land gets a little tricky. It's doable. I don't like working. Penny will know this from the time that we got together. I hate banks. I hate having to deal with banks any more than I have to. So we used an investment that we had made years ago, and we took that investment money and we pretty much kind of rolled it over into the property, and we used the property as we looked at the property not only as a future place to homestead or get away, but also as an investment. The property was viewed from the get-go as, hey, we can turn this into something else if we have to, or if we decide differently. And property generally goes up over the long term. I'm not saying you're going to make a fortune in 3 years or 5 years or anything like that, but there is such a thing as a self-directed IRA, things like that, that you can use money from your 401k, roll it over, and purchase investment property. Not just rental, like income property, but actual vacant or open land, or so yeah. And folks, stick to your budget. When you write your budget down, it's so easy to exceed it by $10,000, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing if it's going to take the $10,000 to get all the stuff you want. But if you say that you can afford $75,000 for the land or to make your purchase, boy, stay within that zone. You were probably honest with yourself when you put that budget, when you put that monetary or that amount down. So stick somewhat to that budget. And like I say, it's one thing to go $5,000 or $7,000 over, but it's very easy, just like when people are looking for homes, to get suckered into the 25,000 over and the 40,000 over. And
So once we established what our budget was, I jumped online and I started looking. Of course, I started looking on Zillow at first, and what I was looking for was undeveloped land and farms and ranches.
hunting properties. There's one that
Hunting
everybody always
properties,
overlooks.
yes,
Yeah, hunting
yes,
properties.
that's what I started looking, and then I started expanding, looking on other sites like lands.com or
Lands USA or something, or USA
Yes,
Lands.
I
We forget
forgot.
now. It's been a
I
few years
forgot.
since we. But they're out there, folks, and really, I'm going to
but
tell you.
it's undeveloped land. That's what I was looking for, or recreational land, and but because we already knew what kind of climate we wanted, and we were open to relocate. I was looking at properties in Arkansas. I was looking at we were looking at properties in Missouri.
And really, where we wound up purchasing was not where we originally intended. That was. It's not that it was out of our scope, but that was not on our list. We were pretty dead set that we were going to wind up in the Arkansas, kind of Missouri area. That was kind of where we just kind of established that was, this is going to work for us as far as proximity to home and climate. Still gets cold, but it's not like being where we are now. It's not like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan kind of weather like we deal with here. But
I mean, we were even looking on Craigslist, on Facebook Marketplace, that you can punch in the city and the state on Facebook Marketplace, and boom, it will show you property. And what we
had a few other criteria here that you
What?
kind of skipped over. Well, we didn't actually cover the bonus points. And
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is something that we actually were almost dead set that we had to have on the property because we knew the cost involved. And that is, first of all, folks, when you buy vacant property and you see the price for it, you're buying just raw land, and you see the property for it, I want you to understand, this is something that people do not talk about. They'll say, well, I can buy 5 acres for $4,000, or I can buy 5 acres for $8,000. This is true. Is there water on the property? Is there the ability to draw water from the ground? In other words, a well, which we all know. You don't even want to get into the prices of digging wells. And in certain parts of the United States, going through sheer rock or bedrock, wells get expensive very quickly. Simple things like clearing an area for a driveway gets expensive quick. And I know all the guys out there with their chainsaws. I own a chainsaw too. You think you're going to run out there and cut down the trees. You're going to do all this work. If you're 30 years old or 40 years old and that's something that you just really enjoy doing, great. But be realistic here again with yourself. Putting in driveways over ditches and This is not cheap stuff, folks. It's, yes, you can do it yourself. Your process is going to slow down considerably, and the amount of work that you are going to be forced to do, and especially if you're buying the property away from where you currently live, this becomes very expensive very quickly. Wells, we were very fortunate. Penny found a property that had 2 dug wells, and we're talking 180-foot wells. And the property also had, as a bonus, we knew there was a septic on the property because there was a home site. What we later found out after the purchase, yes, we bought a property that had a septic on it. Well, we found out that the property had 2 more septics on it, where other home sites had been years ago, and the septics were still functioning, were still in proper repair, and we got some other bonuses with the property as well. That
Storm shelter.
storm shelter that was basically, it was pretty much a septic tank with only 3 walls poured.
I've never seen a storm shelter before until.
Yeah.
I thought it was a root cellar.
And it would work as a root cellar. We could have used it that we could use it that way as well. But anyway, folks, the point of all of this is you can buy a $5,000 or $8,000 property. That property, if you're going to dig a well and if you're going to put in a septic and you're going to do all of these things, that is no longer an $8,000 or $10,000 property. You are now quickly approaching $30,000, $40,000. So just keep this in mind. We heard this when we bought the property.
You missed the main one.
Yeah.
The number one, I can't believe.
Yeah,
I
you skipped
missed
right over your number one prerequisite. You
Yes.
were insistent.
It has to be unzoned.
Unrestricted.
Yes.
Unzoned, unrestricted.
Why is that important?
Well, that was important simply because we didn't want any real issues with putting up a shelter, but putting up, we actually moved like mini cabins or almost sheds that we insulated. We built a bathhouse and did all this wonderful stuff, or put up a bathhouse. And we didn't have to go to anybody for any permission to do what it was that we did. I even double checked, and I can't believe I did this because most of the time I would say I'll just do it and pay the price later if there's some sort of issue. But I actually went in and talked to the county register, whatever that whole deal was. Anyway, and they said, "Oh no, if a cabin is moved on, if it's not site built, it doesn't affect your property taxes or anything like that. And you don't need our approval to do that. You may move it on there." And you may move as many of those small buildings on there as what you want. I specifically asked the person, this was a lady, she's very nice. So, well, what's the size limit? She says there isn't one. If it's a portable building, well, folks, they make portable buildings that are 14 feet wide and 45, 50 feet long. You can buy portable, quote unquote, portable buildings.
But if you don't have the money to buy a portable metal building, you have property to park your RV on, your car on.
Yeah, and we were looking at that as well. We didn't know which way. Granted, folks, we bought this during COVID, and things were a little rough as far as trying to get items. We wound up being able to make things work.
So we were looking online on Zillow and a couple of other land for sale sites.
Zillow's actually not that great.
We looked. You can look for properties when you read the description. Sometimes there's owner financing. Sometimes they say land contract available, and that's another option that can help you out in trying to purchase the property.
Mm-hmm. Well, and since we're going down this list, land contracts and stuff like that for sale by owners are wonderful if the guy is not just going to try to stick you with the highest interest rate, stuff like that. But if you can work out a deal and get, we view it as originally, when you first start out, it's going to be a recreation property. That's how it's pretty much going to be viewed by everybody. Try to get the lowest interest rate, obviously, that you can. I suggest, like I said, trying to buy it for cash outright and avoiding all of that, but certainly working or a huge down payment and working with somebody on a land contract. I'd rather pay interest to an individual than a bank, so that's a win-win. He's getting some money for lending you money, and
so when you find the property that you're interested in, I would suggest the next thing you do is do some research in the area. Just look up the area, the demographics,
make sure you're going to be comfortable there, and also we pulled topographic maps and stuff that were available online to get at least a little idea of the lay of the land. We're not even computer literate, So that's probably obvious from the videos that we do. We're not computer literate people, and yet we even found a way to go in and look at the property from above. What is that? Google Earth and all these other things that I'm not really all that. I don't really follow too much of that, but you can go in and actually get a little bit of a lay of the land and see once if it's something. Now, something that's not on your list here that I remember we specifically had to check out: flood zones, people. It's very important. Has there been a flood in the area? Is that something that exists? Washouts from rain, and these are all kind of important aspects when you're going in and you're checking property. And if property is dirt cheap, more often than not, there's a really good reason that property is dirt cheap. And this is really crucial out west, folks. Floodplains or flood zones, or I forget what they actually call them out there, where it rains and all of a sudden water comes rushing down gullies and low paths, and all of a sudden everything is just whisked away. Be very careful. Check floodplains. Be a little bit aware of out west too, wildfires, stuff like that. Try to figure out. Those
Do
are
the
all kind of
research
important stuff.
on the climate. What's the average temperature? How much snowfall does it get? How much rainfall does it get?
Well, and what's funny is most of the stuff we found most of the stuff is actually quite available. So like the floodplain for our place was like a 1 out of 10. And we could go online and look that up. It was very easy for us to, at the elevation and where we were located, hey, what are the chances of floods? What are the chances of... Yeah, and it was basically 0. There's never going to be a 0 in anything, folks. But there was always... It was very, very low. A 1 out of 10 for flooding and things like that. So be very careful about that.
The next thing you want to check for is the sale history of the property.
Yeah.
Usually in the listing, if you keep scrolling down, there'll be further information. You just have to click on it for it to expand, and you want to see
how many times it's been bought and sold.
Yes.
And folks, the reason that this is important is because a lot of people go in and buy land simply as an investment and try to do a quick flip on it. Which more often than not means that you're going to be paying more money for the land than you should. A person went in and bought it a year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They've held on to it, and their entire intention, not that there's anything wrong with this in particular, but was to flip it. They were waiting to jack up the price. It usually means you're not getting a great deal. That's what it usually means. That's not always the case, but if the property's been bought and sold 3 or 4 times over the last 10 or 15 years, more than likely those have been investment purchases and somebody is looking. And it also means that people are they're more averse to striking a bargain or striking a deal. They know what they want out of the property, and they're not going to go any lower. So their asking price is a lot of times very close to set in stone. It may be up a little bit, but you're not going to wheel and
check
deal a
on
whole
the
lot.
sale history.
Yep.
The next thing you want to look at is the tax history of the property.
Yeah, owning a second property, folks, that is going to cost you thousands of dollars in property tax for not being there is a bad idea. It quickly becomes an anchor as opposed to something that's freeing, right? The wife or the husband is not necessarily so thrilled to make out a $2,000 property tax bill to a place you have not been to in a year.
And you can see it will show you the year and how much, whether the taxes have increased or decreased.
Well, and one thing I can tell you 2 states that work this way. I do not know of any more. I'm sure there are more. There is this wonderful thing. There are states that have non-disclosure as far as the price is concerned. So you do not have to put forward to the state how much was paid for the property for them to go in, and now you just gave them the information to reassess the property. I know Missouri in 2020, 21 was a non-disclosure state. You did not have to disclose what you paid for the property, and therefore the reassessment of the property was not probably going to be all that different. So, and where Alabama is this way, we found this out with Alabama. Alabama wound up being a non-disclosure state, so you didn't have to tell them what was actually paid for the property.
What does it say, the first statement?
Yeah, the property was sold for $20 and other valuable consideration. And the reason that's done, folks, is that's actually that's legalese because $20 constitutionally apparently allows you the right to a jury trial if there is some sort of issue with the property. So that's why the $20 thing will come up. You will see that in Missouri. You will see that in Alabama. I don't know about Arkansas. I don't know how that works. But anyway, non-disclosure states are wonderful. So that's one thing to look into. If you're looking for a property, a state that does not require you to place on record what you paid for the property works greatly to your advantage. I'm going to tell you right now, Penny and I's property is over 20 acres, and the property tax bill is well under $100. Very easy to make out that check every year for our investment, for our getaway, for our place. Very easy. And it also, here again, if things don't work out, you want to sell that property. It's a wonderful selling point to put across to somebody is, hey, you know, it's one thing to buy cheap property. It's another thing to buy inexpensive or cheap property, and the property tax bill is not going to beat you up year after year after year when you're not yet enjoying it, when you're not yet spending time.
And that is something to keep in mind, that the tax for this year is not reflective of the selling price.
No, and it certainly is not reflective of what you're going to pay for property taxes
Yes.
after you purchase it. That is true. Most
And
places.
more than likely, that tax will increase after your sale. And a lot of homeowners, especially the younger ones, are finding that out.
Yeah, here when you live on the East Coast, New Hampshire and all of the whatever, Vermont, and here again, Indiana, folks, what you pay for the property and what you saw the old property tax bill as is going to be readjusted when you buy that property and they see the purchase price. It just went to, they have a true basis now for the value of the property. Somebody may have been paying on that property for 25 years, paying property tax based on its assumed value of, we'll just say, $30,000. But you just bought the property for $110,000. It's going to be reassessed, folks. You are going to pay more property tax. And a lot of these
So
people...
that's why it's nice to purchase property in a state that you...
It's not disclosed.
Yes.
It's a wonderful thing.
The next item to look at is the length of time the property has been on the market. Because then, usually the longer the property has been on the market, it kind of gives you, as a potential buyer, some kind of negotiating power. Possibly you can get
Absolutely.
the price lowered.
Yep, that's a big one, no doubt about it. Longer it's been on the market, the less valuable it becomes, folks. That's just economics 101, supply and demand. If it's been on the market for a year, there's obviously not demand at its current asking price. So most properties, we found this out, most properties that are in an in-demand area do not sit on the market very long. So if you find a property, and I'm going to tell you, use your vacation time, whatever it is, if you find a property that appears to meet your criteria, do not sit and wait. Use your vacation time, use whatever it is that you have to go see the property, do as much investigation like Penny had said online, and be ready to move quickly on a property when it comes up and it has checked all your boxes.
And then, question that you'd want to find out is, has the property been surveyed? Sometimes there's old buildings and cabins, and then you have a neighbor maybe a mile down.
All right, yep, and we have horror stories for this. Folks, surveys are not everything. There is such a thing in rural America as what we call fence lines, and there's adverse possession. Be very careful. Yes, a survey is important. There are other things. When you go to look at a property and you are boots on the ground, walk that property, especially in the South. If you are looking in Georgia, if you are looking in Alabama, if you are looking in Mississippi, South Carolina, North Carolina, I don't know that much about. But I can tell you this, long-standing fences in rural areas of Appalachia and other rural areas in Georgia and stuff, those become property lines, folks. And this is something nobody told us. We went in completely blind to this. It worked out. It wasn't a big deal. Pay very close attention to fences and people's use, outside folks' use of your property, or of the property you're looking at purchasing. Be very, very aware. Like I say, our story did not end in a horror story, but it was not fun negotiating a quote-unquote fence line that had been there for 30 years, 40 years. We're not even sure.
So,
It was old. So these are all things people, this is what we're trying to do in when we have these podcasts. These are things that people do not bring up. They may bring them up in passing, but I'm telling you right now that if you go into the South, I'm sure Missouri is somewhat this way. I'm sure Arkansas is. Be very aware of fences that are on the property and how they are in relation to the neighboring properties or the adjacent properties, or just letting you know, go down, look for fence lines, be very aware. Fence lines become property lines in the South. They do.
Okay. And then once you've gotten some answers, before you make an offer, ask who is responsible for the fees.
90% of the time, the seller is going to be responsible for fees. Do not assume that
That's-
is the case, especially on a rural property, a vacant property, or be very aware of who his fees may be split 50-50. Do not ever take the fees on 100%. Do not ever take the closing costs and stuff on as the buyer at 100%. If you think you're getting a good deal on the property and the closing fees can be split 50-50, that's up to you. We would suggest generally the seller is the one who pays the fees.
So then the next step is you make your offer.
And stick to your darn budget, folks. It's like I say, there's one thing to waffle. Don't let $5,000 stand in the way of you getting what you think is your ideal property. Don't let necessarily even $10,000. It's maybe more of a percentage thing. But you have to be aware, it's very easy to jump when we were looking and we're saying, oh, we'd like something around $60,000 to $70,000. We don't want to really spend any more than that. And it's very easy to start looking at properties that are $120,000 because, oh, look at, they're checking the boxes. And we wound up purchasing a property for actually less than this. We stayed under our budget. We were under our budget. We made an offer less than the asking price. They counter offered. We were all happy at the end of the day for what we paid for the property, and we locked the property up in the course of, I don't know, 2 afternoons. I think we looked at the property and we made the offer and we owned the property. Well, they accepted our
And
offer.
thinking back on it, their realtor, the seller's realtor, I can tell was lazy. He never got out and actually walked and looked at the property.
Yes, we were very fortunate. We actually, and we say that to this day. Yes, there's some boots on the ground and there's work that you put in, but there's also some luck that comes into play. And there's the old saying of "I'll take luck over being good any day." And we got very, very lucky on the property from the standpoint is that the sellers, they actually inherited the property. The sellers wanted rid of the property. They found a realtor to list the property. The realtor didn't want to walk the land. He was lazy, didn't take pictures. He didn't know there was a storm shelter on the property. He didn't know about the other septics on the property. Just all of the things that went into the property, how it should have been valued. So we pretty much, when we bought the property, it's safe to say that we probably made almost 100%. We probably almost doubled our money on what the property was actually worth. It was very close to that. Simply because there was a lazy realtor, and that was just simple dumb luck. We got lucky that he was lazy, and that they accepted I can't believe when we got down there and we actually were kind of messing with the property and seeing the property, and I can't believe that we got it for the price we got it for. But
That's because of the realtor. So that could be another episode of
how much we hate realtors.
Yes, and what to avoid from a realtor. Anyways,
Start looking, folks. If it's something that you're interested in, start looking now. and be ready to move. Go through, figure out your 401k, figure out what you've got that you're willing to actually put up, what you're actually willing to invest. But start looking and be ready to purchase when you see.
If you have any questions, just let us know
Throw them in the comments.
and we'll try to answer them. Okay?
Yeah, put our experience and age to work for you, folks. Well, that's.
And remember.
Oh, yeah. What? Hey,
I said remember. Life doesn't get better.
You get better. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Look forward to seeing you soon.